We are actually following some breaking news here at this hour. Want to pop up a live look over the White House as President Donald Trump has now announced that he's levying tariffs of 30% against the European Union and Mexico, and that is slated to start August 1st. Trump did announce the planned tariffs on two of the U.S.'s biggest trade partners in letters that were posted to his social media account. They're part of an announcement blitz by President Trump of new tariffs with allies and foes alike, a bedrock of his 2024 campaign that he said would set the foundation for reviving a U.S. economy that he claims has been ripped off by other nations for decades. In his letter to Mexico's leader, President Trump acknowledged that the country has been helpful in stemming the flow of undocumented migrants and fentanyl into the U.S., but he said the country has not done enough to stop North America from turning into a narco-trafficking playground. Quote, Mexico has been helping me secure the border, but what Mexico has done is not enough. Now, Trump, in his letter to the European Union, said that the U.S. trade deficit was a national security threat. Quote, we have had years to discuss our trading relationship with the European Union, and we have concluded we must move away from these long-term, large, and persistent trade deficits engendered by your tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers. Again, that was from a letter specifically posted to the EU. He said, quote, our relationship has been unfortunately far from reciprocal. We do actually have one of those letters here coming in that he again just posted here on Truth Social. And this one, obviously very tiny type, but it is the letter that he sent over to Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. Now, European Union Commission President von der Leyen responded by noting the bloc's, quote, commitment to dialogue, stability, and a constructive transatlantic partnership. At the same time, we will take all necessary steps to safeguard EU interests, including the adoption of proportionate countermeasures if required. She wrote that in her statement. President Trump, as he has in previous letters, warned that his administration would further raise tariffs if the EU attempts to hike its own tariffs on the U.S., which sounds like what von der Leyen is saying they will do. With the reciprocal tariffs, President Trump is effectively blowing up the rules governing world trade. For decades, the U.S. and most other countries abided by tariff rates set through a series of complex negotiations known as the Uruguay Round. Countries could set their own tariffs, but under the, quote, most favored nation approach, they could not charge one country more than they charged another. The Italian government said today that it continues to, quote, closely monitor the ongoing trade negotiations between the EU and the U.S., fully supporting the EU Commission's efforts. They did say in a statement, quote, we trust in the goodwill of all stakeholders to reach a fair agreement that can strengthen the West as a whole, given that particularly in the current scenario, it would make no sense to trigger a trade war between the two sides of the Atlantic. The Mexico tariff, if it does go into effect, could replace the 25% tariffs on Mexican goods that do not comply with the existing U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. Trump's letter did not address if USMCA-compliant goods would still be exempt from the Mexico tariffs after August 1st, as the White House said would be the case with Canada. Trump did send a letter to Canada earlier this week threatening a 35% tariff hike. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business has more on that.
The rift between the U.S. and Canada could be deepening as President Trump announces an elevated 35% tariff on imported goods.
We've been taken advantage of for many, many years by countries, both friend and foe. And frankly, the friends have been worse than the foes in many cases. So I would say just keep working. It's all going to work out.
Canada is the third largest source of goods imported into the U.S. Thursday, President Trump posted a letter to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Truth Social announcing a 35% tariff starting August 1st with exemptions for USMCA-compliant goods. The move cites Canada's failure to stop drugs from pouring into our country.
Are you really going to slap Canada with a 35% tariff over kind of negligible fentanyl trade over the border?
In the end, what President's doing is putting America first. These tariffs are an America first policy.
This rate marks a steep jump from the 25% tariff imposed in March, which Canada answered with retaliatory tariffs. To preempt further escalation, President Trump warned, quote, "If for any reason you decide to raise your tariffs, then whatever the number you choose to raise them by will be added onto the 35% we charge." Critics believe Trump won't follow through.
He always makes big threats only to back down. As we all know, Donald Trump always chickens out when it comes to tariffs.
The Trump administration still negotiating with Canada. This August 1st deadline puts pressure on those negotiations to come to an agreement. At the White House, Edward Lawrence, Fox Business.